Is losing your faith possible? I lost mine, so let's talk about it. Welcome back to my channel. So I don't want to make this into a very intense theological discussion on the nature of faith. What is faith? No. And if you're coming to an ex-Catholic priest in order to learn about your catechism, my main purpose is to add my part into a conversation that maybe you are having in your head. I myself too am still reflecting on everything that happened before I left Catholicism, and I hope to make more and more videos like this where I delve into what happened in my life, my experiences, and just add my 2 cents. Step 1, always the same, to define your terms. What is faith according to Catholicism? Objectively, faith is the sum of truths revealed by God in Scripture and tradition, and which the Church presents in a brief form in its creeds, so its beliefs. Subjectively, faith stands for the habit or virtue by which these truths are assented to. It is a free gift from God through grace. It's something supernatural with God as the object, because humans are mere mortals and we can't reach the sublime heights of the supernatural. So we need God's help, right? And it's believing in God without having the physical proof that we would normally have, like with scientific truths. So the big question is, why did I lose my faith? We're going to watch a few videos. I'm going to do some commentary, kind of flesh out my story a little bit and see what happens. And I would appreciate it if you like and subscribe to my channel. There are a lot of videos that are similar to this, and I have many more videos planned for the future. And if you would like to help me financially, I will leave down below a link to my Ko-fi page, which is like a Patreon, and you can go make a one-time donation or a monthly subscription type of donation. And there's special content for people who give money there. I'm uploading little by little parts of my book that I'm editing right now, but it's just a little incentive. But I appreciate everything. I appreciate that you are here right now watching this video, and this is going to be a long video. Okay, let's get into this video with Father Mike. Faith is not something you can lose.
Hi, my name is Father Mike Schmitz, and this is Ascension Presents. So,
what? What did he just say?
Hi, my name is Father Mike Schmitz, and this is Ascension Presents.
Hi, I'm Father Mike Schmitz, and this is Ascension Presents.
So, one of the things that I will encounter on a regular basis is people who say, either about themselves or about someone they love, I just lost my faith. Or they'll say about, maybe one of their kids, my son or my daughter has lost their faith, or my sibling has lost their faith. I want to look at that idea, the concept of, is it possible to lose your faith? We have to understand that faith is both a gift and a virtue.
He is making the distinction, which is the Catholic distinction, that faith is a gift from God. It's not something that we deserve. It's something supernatural, because the object of faith is God. And because we're poor little creatures with a poor intellect, we can't reach God unless God helps us reach God. So it requires a gift, but it also requires the grace from God to accept the gift. And then he says it's a virtue. Philosophically, a virtue is a habit that is reinforced by continuous activity. So you build up a habit to do good actions, and that is virtue. So he's going to say that faith is something that is we receive, that's beyond our control, but, and this is probably going to be the most important aspect, it's something that we have to work on. And the reason that we lose the faith has anything to do with God or is God's fault or anything like that, because God wants us all to be saved. No, it's because we haven't worked hard enough to persevere.
What I mean by that is no one can give themselves the gift of faith. It's always given, right? That's what a gift is. It's given. And so it's a gift given to those who believe by God himself. Now,
the way this guy talks makes me very anxious.
God desires that all men come to knowledge of him and come to salvation. But it is also a virtue, which means it's something that has to be cultivated, has to be used, has to be exercised. That's one of the reasons why I say that I do not believe it's possible for anyone to lose their faith. We either choose to give it away or we choose not to use it. Now, to choose to give it away doesn't have to happen all at once. Typically, it's not one massive decision to say, no, I will not serve the Lord, I'll serve something else. Usually, though, it's when we take our heart back from the Lord and give it to something else piece by piece.
And this is something that's also very Catholic, in the seminary especially, but this is something that you can apply to just perseverance in general. So not sinning. Specifically in the seminary, they constantly told us if we weren't trying our hardest, if we were giving in to ourselves and not being completely generous with God in little things, then in the big things, we would fail. And ultimately, the biggest failure would be losing our priesthood, losing our soul, being in hell forever. I remember being in the seminary for 7 years, trying my hardest to be the best seminarian that I could, according to what I was taught at the time.
Because that's what having an idol is, right? It's taking a good thing and making it into an ultimate thing and putting it at the center where only God should be.
So whenever I hear talks like this, as anybody should, you try to apply it to yourself and see if it makes sense. In my experience with losing the faith, it wasn't so much that I wanted to put something in the place of God. It's that I realized that where God was before was empty. I kept trying to hold on to the shell of what was still there, trying to maintain myself going forward.
And again, we typically don't do that in one big move. We typically do that in very small moves. We can say, okay, God, I'm yours. But then what happens is little by little, something else becomes God's chief rival for my heart.
And whenever there's some sort of failure, whenever the system doesn't work, it's always the fault of the poor, helpless creature. I understand that there are people out there who do not have a good will, that they don't give themselves 100% to a religion or a belief system. Maybe they just go along with the flow. Maybe it's just all they ever knew. For them, losing the faith is more of a public declaration of something that was already present. But then you have the people who are trying to do the right thing, who are failing, who are incapable of understanding what's happening, and find themselves in the middle of the ocean and God's not there. The arrogance that these priests talk about these people, it surprises me, considering that they're human beings too.
One way to lose faith, we give it away. The other way is to not use it. I would say that so many people, quote unquote, lose their faith because they simply choose to not use it, which means we give into the sin of indifference. If we don't live in faith, that faith is going to die. I mean, it's the law of like atrophy, right?
Let me see if I can try to figure this out. So you either choose something besides God, little by little, or you become indifferent to things of the faith. What is the connection between those two things? The person caused it. The person started that movement, even if it was just in little things. They started the movement, which ultimately ended up in their demise. I would like to offer my own experience. I think that losing your faith doesn't necessarily have to come from you. When I was still trying to be a good Catholic, I was still talking with the priests and superiors in my life. There was so much momentum behind me that I had all of these duties that I had to do. I was trying to do them the best I could at the moment. Obviously, I wasn't a saint. I wasn't burning with the fire of love. I felt immense darkness and immense emptiness. but I kept doing it because I was afraid to stop. I was afraid to let go. The more that I tried and I tried and I kept going, the worse it was for me, because I realized that continuing on in that path was a lie. I no longer believed in what was under all of those actions, but that wasn't enough to make me stop. I kept going because I thought maybe this was God just testing me. This is the mind of a Catholic. You always have to think you don't know anything. God knows everything, and he does everything for a reason. So you just have to blindly go ahead. And if you come to a point where you don't understand, that's the moment where faith comes in. That's the moment where you just say, God, I believe that you have my best interests at heart, and you keep going. And then there comes a moment where you realize that you are a hypocrite. Not that you put another idol in the place of God, but God's not there anymore. Not that you had become indifferent to religion. The motivation of religion and practicing the faith was gone. Thank you, Father Schmidt. I'm trying not to be sarcastic, but it must be something about his blue eyes. Let's say that we've come to the point where we're like, I don't believe anymore. There are things that we could have done better, but for the most part, we gave it a good go. So then let's take a look at this other video, which is done by Ascension Presents. Let's take this as our last resort. Like we're scrolling on YouTube and we think, okay, let me just look up this subject. I'm gonna leave the Catholic Church. And then this pops up. To anyone thinking about leaving the Catholic Church, let's watch.
So there's a good chance you probably know someone who has left the Catholic Church. I think one of the biggest denominations in the country is former Catholics, right?
I did not even connect that Father Mike Schmidt is connected with,
Hey everybody, this is Jackie Angel with Ascension Presents.
Hi Jackie.
And today I'm going to talk about leaving the Catholic Church. Maybe you yourself
This is such a great subject, and I'm just so happy.
Are thinking, there's a lot of stuff in the Catholic Church. There are a lot of hypocrites. There's a lot of people who are not the nicest. There are a lot of hard teachings, and I personally know people recently who've left the Catholic Church. So I was reading Luke chapter 6 verses 47 through 49. Everyone who comes to me and hears my words and does them, I will show you what he is like. He is like a man building a house who dug deep and laid the foundation upon rock. And when a flood arose, the stream broke against that house and could not shake it.
I remember, I'm just gonna add little memories as they pop up. I remember there were a few priests that were telling me that that I did something wrong, that something happened wrong, that I failed in some way when I was going through my crisis. And it's like, okay, I'd spent my whole life thinking how much I failed. In general, I consider myself a failure. That's what happens when you compare yourself to an ideal saintly version of yourself that is impossible for you to ever become. But I remember this idea of like, well, something must have happened, like little things that happen where you gave in a little bit, and then you've created the situation. You didn't lay down the foundation. You didn't lay down a strong foundation on rock. And my instinct at the time was to think, yeah, I must have, gosh, I really fucked up. This is just, wow. Besides not supplying me with a solution to that situation that they imposed upon me, I came to a point where I thought, wait a second, I did everything that I thought I should do and more. I mean, I don't want to think good of myself, but I went to the seminary to become a priest. I chose a more difficult path because I wanted to be generous, and I thought, well, I mean, I'm capable. I have the intelligence. I'm not the most intelligent, but I have some sort of intelligence. I'm good with people, and I'm compassionate, and like I said, I'm not trying to toot my own horn, but there were certain things, certain qualities that I had where I thought, hey, if God can use them, I'm gonna give it to him. I mean, he's the one who gave it to me anyway, right? Them telling me that I hadn't built my foundation on rock, I thought, what did I do wrong? What I was following from the moment that I started being serious in religion, I was following every priest. I was following all of these wise men that were around me. I was following what I was learning and what was taught to me. I built my foundations of my life and my spiritual life upon the rock that was presented to me. Just a thought.
Now, if our faith is just based on feelings, if our faith is just based on people, yeah, our faith will be shaken. We will be like that house that when the winds come, when scandals come, when somebody is a hypocrite, when we experience difficult teachings of the church.
I know that people leave the church because of some of these things. They don't agree with the teachings. They don't, maybe something happens, God forbid, that they experience some sort of trauma because of the priests. You know what I'm talking about? I know that people go through these experiences and it does cause a reaction and maybe they make the decision to leave. But the way that it's presented all the time in a book or in a talk like this, it's so degrading. It's so demeaning. It makes those experiences like, can you believe people leave for these things? Like, if your faith was based on feelings, well, obviously you're going to lose the faith. It's easier for these people to reduce the experiences of others who have left the faith to these very superficial ideas because it's easier to justify them. Like, oh, that person left because their faith was based on feelings, or that person left because he just couldn't take the teaching of homosexuality. He just couldn't take it. It was too hard for him.
When difficult teachings come and when scandals happen, we will not be shaken because we know that the church, the Catholic Church, was built by Jesus Christ. The truth is, there are times that I'm like, man, like it'd be much easier just to, go to church whenever I wanted. It'd be much easier just to do what the world.
I just don't want to go to Mass on Sunday. Oh, it would be so much easier. I remember there was a woman that came to me one time, and I was a priest at the moment. She was so distraught about her son who stopped going to Mass on Sundays, and he was drinking and he was hanging out with the wrong crowd. He was an adult, okay? And this mother was like, what do I do, Father? I can't take it anymore. It's destroying my life. I didn't talk to her like this. I didn't talk to her in a very condescending type of way. I told her that, some people have to figure things out for themselves, and they're an adult. So give them some space. I guess I'm somebody who always sees a human experience and thinks this is more complex than I'm able to grasp right now. That's being human.
Tells me to do, to have sex, to use contraception, to, it would have been easy if Bobby and I lived together, but it's not, because the teachings of Christ are not always easy. When it comes to the teachings on homosexuality, abortion, when it comes to teachings of contraception. I mean, I think these are the things that are so, in our culture completely says, they're all fine. Like they're all, go do what you want, whatever you want.
All of this implies that you believe. I would say to somebody who is trying to figure things out that instead of just going from one extreme to another, like throwing out the baby with the bathwater, you know what I mean? Try to figure out what's behind these teachings. it will surprise people to see the type of life that I live on a daily basis. Maybe this person, and I don't want to judge them. I know I'm making fun of them, and I don't really want to do that, but I know that that person will hear my story and probably think, oh, I know what you're doing. I know what your weekend's like. And it's like, well, actually, according to the standard of the world, my life is rather boring. It's fulfilling for me, but it's not full of the other extreme. Like if before it was like, you can't touch yourself. Now it's not, I touch myself all the time. Take a breath. Don't water down the situation and really just reflect. Reflect on what's happening within you, what's happening around you. You can ask for opinions. Obviously, we can't experience all the different scenarios in one life. So that's why we go to other people to ask their opinion. I will tell you that this video is not convincing me now to go back to the faith, nor would it have convinced me back then to stay.
That what Jesus said is true. And it, instead of, again, having the kind of disposition of that we know better than God, really having that disposition of humility and like, okay, Lord, if you said it, it must be true.
I realize that this video is directed towards people who are not questioning their faith. Okay, it's losing its direction. She doesn't really know where she's going with this. It's okay. You know, it's complicated when you're talking about the faith, when you're talking about dealing with a crisis. You know, these are things that are complicated, and if you remain within the structure, like everything she's saying is from the perspective of someone who believes. When you take that aspect out, it's hard to make sense of what's happening within somebody. So yeah, I experienced this when I was talking with my superiors and I was telling them what was happening to me spiritually inside. You know, I was doing some external actions, but inside there were changes that were happening that I was expressing to the priests who were supposed to be guiding me. And they didn't have an answer. If you believe in God, then there's so many conclusions that follow. And it kind of makes sense. But if that faith is taken away, then their system does not work. Thank you for stopping by, and I hope to hear your comments and questions, and let's start a conversation. And let me know maybe what I should do for the next video. Please like and subscribe to the channel, and I'll see you next time. Peace!